Welcome back to Talking Risks. It's a podcast about taking risks. Every week we have an entrepreneur on who will share his or her beginnings, strategies, losses, victories, and their pursuit of their legacies. We hope in doing this that we can expand our education and your education on entrepreneurialism and hopefully provide some motivation for you to go out and achieve your legacies. My name is Eric Reese. I'm a co-host of Talking Risk, and I own a law firm. It's called Aspen Legal, www.aspenlawteam.com. My co-host is Ricky Hall. Ricky?
Hi, I'm Ricky Hall. I am the founder of Nutrition HQ and Nutrition HQ Franchising.
Our guest today is someone who I have known for probably decades. Always been impressed with everything that he has done. He is in a constant pursuit to grow his legacy. His name's Munsok So. Munsok?
Yes, thanks for having me.
Of course. Munsok, tell us a little bit about your companies and your brands.
Again, my name is Munsok So. Originally from South Korea. Came over here when I was 6 years old. So I've been living here in the United States for pretty much all my life. I own So Hospitality Group, which is a hospitality company that owns and operates the Drunken Fish restaurants here in St. Louis and also in Kansas City. Also Kimchi Guys, which is a fast casual Korean fried chicken restaurant, and 612 North, which operates events for weddings and corporates, parties and things of that sort here in St. Louis.
And Munsok's writing a book, From South Korea to South St. Louis. I made that part up. Why would you write such a book?
Yeah. That would be an interesting book for sure.
All right. So, as you know, if you've listened to our podcast before, we start this with something called Hot Topics.
Hot Topics.
Hot Topics are things that Ricky and I have talked about over the course of a week, things that we've read about or pondered. This hot topic is something that we probably pondered over too many scotches, but it's what we've talked about, Ricky, for years and years, and that is greed. My position on greed, and I think Ricky agrees, is that greed will destroy all relationships, both business and personal. And the problem with greed is that it's just human nature. I was reading Psychology Today's take on greed, and of course they want to explain it all about you weren't loved enough as a baby, et cetera, et cetera. And the fact of the matter is I think that they were just afraid to just come out and say greed is normal in human beings. I've represented so many people over the years that have partnered with others, and I always tell them, look, there are two times that you guys are not going to get along. One, when the company is losing money because it's your fault. Can't be my fault because I'm working hard. And the other time that you don't get along, interestingly enough, is when the company's making a ton of money because, gee whiz, I'm entitled to more because I'm working harder than you. Just an example of greed. But greed kills everything in my experience.
Yeah, and it not only will come between yourself, your business partners, your staff, it will trickle down into your customers, I believe, also.
Oh, sure. And so, my feeling is that, and part of this, I think, is just getting older. All of us around this table have been around for a while, gotten our teeth kicked in. Not everything that we've done has been successful, or certainly not me. So part of this probably is just wisdom. When we're younger and we can't wait to have the cars and the houses and everything else, I think that that's probably normal behavior. But I'll tell you this, that if you're just working for the money, if you're just working to screw the other guy, if you're just working to screw your employees, if you're just working to get a bigger house, there's always somebody with a bigger house than you. Our business down at the Lake of the Ozarks, you can get as big a boat as you want, and then some jackass is going to come by with a boat twice as big. It is a zero-sum gain if you're just chasing the money. There's always going to be somebody richer and with more shit than you have.
There's going to be, the boat's going to be bigger, the boat's going to be faster, the jet's going to be newer, it's going to fly faster.
Exactly. But if you're working for a legacy, I think to leave an impression, right? To look back, and the person that you should try to achieve, to impress as an entrepreneur is yourself. I don't know about you guys, but when I'll sit back on my deck at night smoking a cigar and drinking a scotch, I always think about my losses, not my victories. I don't sit there that, if you take a look around this office, you don't see any law degrees. I also don't have my, grade school grades up, for Christ's sake. Those are just things that people might consider an accomplishment. I don't ever think about my accomplishments. I think about the things that I could do better, which makes me drive even harder the next day. Yeah,
and that's actually one of my favorite Oscar speeches is Matthew McConaughey talking about chasing himself and who you after. Myself in 10 more years and myself. And he basically says, I'll keep chasing myself over and over and over again and getting better and better. And that's what will make you successful too. And I always like to bring this up when Eric and I met after I split from my last franchise. We're walking down the streets of Clayton, and you go, the day you get greedy, I will not represent you anymore.
Yeah.
And and we believe in that culture. And when we bring on new franchisees now, we're not chasing a check. If you chase the check, you're going to get in trouble. Yeah, because you'll destroy it, whatever it is. If nothing else, you'll destroy a personal relationship that's important to you. And in the end, you'll destroy yourself because you'll be a dick and nobody likes you, right? And that's just the way it is. And my guess is we've all known those people. Maybe we've been those people at some point. But guard against it, because I do think it's human nature. I do think it's very easy. I see people coming together and, they've got the great idea for a business, and I think it's great. And they're all getting along, drafting up the operating agreement or drafting up the shareholder agreement. And then somebody starts projecting and they go, well, what happens when this thing gets really big? And then they start saying, well, maybe I ought to have more of a percentage, right? They start arguing about percentage of ownership. It's like, guys, quit your projecting, right? The thing is probably never going to meet those sorts of expectations. So now you're already destroying your relationship from the get-go. It makes no sense. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get to Munsok. We're going to talk with him about first his beginnings. And Munsok, if you will, and again, the show's not about immigration, but certainly your story is interesting, coming from South Korea to the United States. I mean, how did you get here?
I think in 1980, I was a young kid, 5-6 years old. My sister was a couple of years older than me, and she had, at the time, we didn't know what it was, but we know she has muscular dystrophy now.
Oh, gosh.
And so at the time, she was having some difficulties walking and things of that sort. We didn't know what it was. And so my aunt, my mother's sister, lived over here in the United States already, and told her, hey, there's better medical facilities here in the United States. We'll sponsor you over.
Sure.
So that was one of the main reasons I think we came over to the United States. And we had made that leap as a family and really trying to make sure that we get better opportunities and primarily see if there's better medical facilities for my older sister at the time.
Sure. And how did you immigrate? I mean, did you immigrate under what sort of visa or whatever did your dad or mom get?
Obviously, my aunt had citizenship here, and she was married to an American person. Okay. Met them in the military in Korea. And so she has sponsored my mom and my family over. Okay. Yeah. And so we came over, and we stayed at their place for about 6 months over in Illinois side. Okay. And about 6 months later, we got a house over in South City area. Okay. And we started doing a lot of the medical stuff, obviously, for my sister at the time. Sure. And so at that time, we figured out that she had muscular dystrophy. And she's in a wheelchair now.
Okay.
But she gets around everywhere fine.
Yeah.
She drives. And
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
Great.
there's a lot of great technology out there in the medical field where she's able to get around. But and it only affects her extremities, her hands to her lower arm and her feet and her lower legs.
Okay.
And so, that was one of the main reasons why we came to the United States.
Well, did your mom and dad, did they have means? I mean, did they have bucks from?
No. My dad was a cab driver in South Korea.
Oh, wow.
So when they came over here not knowing English and trying to make ends meet, I mean, they both went into custodian work at local schools in the Clayton High School District.
Okay.
So they were both custodians trying to make ends meet, obviously. Yeah,
so often in the franchising industry, we bring people in through the EB-5 or the E2 program. The EB-5 is where they put, well, now it's $1 million you got to put in, basically buy your way in the United States by buying a business. The E2 is a bit different. It's a lot cheaper to get in. But with EB-5, you don't need to really participate in the business. You need to own it. With E2, you really need to participate in the business. So I'm always curious with respect to people who have come over, during their lifetime. I'm sure my people came over, but good Lord, that was generations ago, and who have become successful. So your mom and dad obviously were working hard, and they did it for all the right reasons for their kiddos. So where did you go to school from there?
I predominantly went to public schools growing up.
Okay.
Went to a magnet high school called Health Careers. They don't exist anymore.
Okay.
And went to St. Louis University for college.
Okay. Yeah. And so is your sister older or younger?
My older sister. I have a younger sister as well. Yeah.
Okay. So you went through SLU, and then where did you go?
That's it. 4-year degree from St. Louis University with a clinical laboratory science degree, which doesn't really help you in anything that I do now. But
we have never talked about that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So what did you start doing after you got out of college?
I opened up a small bar over in Collinsville, Illinois, right out of college with a college buddy of mine, and that was kind of the start of my business career.
Wow.
Back, how many years ago was that? A lot of years.
Yeah.
So what made you jump straight into a bar? Were you working in the hospitality business?
No, I wasn't. I was,
You like to drink.
Yeah, well, kids at that age all like to drink,
That's right.
But I was throwing college parties a lot with some buddies of mine, and we were very successful at it in college. And so I thought maybe that skill set can kind of move into running a bar, running a nightclub.
So by running a college party, clearly, I just had a very small group of friends, and we all smoked funny things and drank whiskey in dorm rooms and apartments. So what does that mean, running a college party? I literally don't know.
Really, it's all about promotions. It's about picking a place where you let people know that this is where a good time's going to happen. Okay. Get a DJ. Yeah. You contract that out, and then you promote the heck out of it, and you collect cover charge when they come in. Okay. So you get a couple hundred people. You let them come in for $5 a person, and then you split that.
That's
money.
Awesome.
Wow.
So I thought that was just in movies. No, it actually happens.
I'm sure it happens now.
So you were in business. You were in the hospitality business while you were in college.
Pretty much.
By default.
Right.
By default. Yeah.
But what made you come up with that idea?
In college, you're saying?
Yeah.
Just something that I thought would be fun to do.
Okay.
And at the time, I was hanging out with some people that were also kind of enjoy kind of promoting parties.
Yeah.
And it's really just about marketing and promoting and meeting a lot of people through that process.
Yeah.
Which led me to getting out of college and deciding, do I want to pursue that? Sure. As an entrepreneur.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you bought a bar. Did you buy it from somebody, or did you start the bar?
So I accidentally run into this place in Collinsville. It was connected to a travel lodge. So think about that. Okay. A travel lodge hotel.
Nice place.
Beautiful. And it was a hotel lounge. And I remember meeting up with a friend that lived in Maryland. No. What was the name of the little town?
Maryland Heights?
No, Maryville, Illinois.
Right up the road, yeah.
So we ended up meeting up with him in this little small hotel lounge. And there was literally the owner was in there, and a bartender, and like 3 other people.
And
on
you
a
guys
Friday
were
night.
21 years old.
We were 21 years old, and we're like, immediately I'm going, man, this place is slow. They need somebody to promote this place.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
And so from then on, I started coming in frequently just to check out the business level. So I came back in the next couple of weeks, maybe 4 or 5 times.
Right.
And it was just as slow.
Yeah.
You know. So
tell me you called it the Travel Lounge, right? That's a great name, the Travel Lounge.
Definitely wasn't the Travel Lounge.
Okay. Go ahead.
So we decided. So at that moment, I started talking to the owners about, hey, what are you trying to do? You know, what are you trying to sell? So it was a lady that owned it, wanted to sell it. And so
just the bar or the motel?
Just the bar.
Okay.
Just the bar. It was So she was paying rent to the Travel Lodge.
Oh, okay.
Very prestigious Travel Lodge.
Yeah, right.
And so immediately I got a friend involved that went to college with me that used to throw parties with me.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, you want to do this thing? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So we started negotiating with her, and obviously she wanted a dollar amount that was way above our budget.
Sure. Of course.
As college, we just graduated from college.
$1,000? Who do you think we are?
Yeah, exactly. And so we were trying to get to a point where we didn't have to buy the business, that we would just run the business and split the cost of the business because we didn't have any money.
Okay.
So we're like, hey, we're trying to convince this lady, hey, we'll run it. We'll promote all the parties for you.
Yeah.
You use your own business license, liquor license. Yeah. And whatever we bring in, let's just split it 50-50.
Management agreement.
Yeah. And she said she wanted to get out of it, you know. And so at the time, we ended up kind of talking to also the owner of the hotel. Okay. She wasn't paying any, we found out she wasn't paying any rent. So the hotel owner said, if you want to just take this business over, I'd rather just give it to you. Wow. So we're going, well, maybe that's a better option, actually, right? Yeah. And so we ended up striking a deal with a landlord. Okay. Spending very little money for renovations. So we had, build a DJ booth, put some lighting up, and we ended up talking to this contractor guy that we met up there to kind of build some of these things for cost. Okay. With some free beers as an incentive. That's awesome. When you're young, you have to be very, very resourceful. Right. You know what I'm saying? A dollar goes a long, long way. And so we ended up opening this place for very, very little money. And it took us about 3 months to start packing them in. Wow. So we're getting a lot of the SIUE students.
That's awesome. Yeah. What was that called? It
was called Club Kaboom.
Club Kaboom. Yeah. And how long did you do that?
For about 3.5, 4 years.
Wow. Yeah. And then did you sell it or
I sold it to my partner at the time, my 50% partner at the time.
All right. I'm going to have to go to Club Kaboom.
You know what? We had Z1077 there. And I don't know if you remember Rick Idle.
Sure.
Boomer.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys used to come through, did the live remotes there.
That's amazing, right? And still a kid, really.
Oh my God, I knew nothing.
And then
compared to what I know now, which is also nothing.
Isn't that amazing? Though you look back like I should have never made this work.
Oh, I should have never.
But that's fun, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then, like you said, when you only got a handful of money to work with, you become extremely creative.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, part of the lesson, though, I think, is, as Munsok said, he talked to anybody and talked to everybody, right? And we've talked about the value of data, but it's more than that. It's about, and I hate to say this, networking, that's gotten a bad rap, but it all came from talking to people. If a 21-year-old kid didn't talk to the owner of the hotel, then he would have passed on it probably because he couldn't pay the dough.
I think when you're at that age and you're wanting to make something happen, you start to realize that there are relationships that you have to be able to have generated to make some of these deals happen. And obviously the landlord conversation was very, very important. Sure. Even the contractor that was willing to do the work for free for beer.
Crazy.
It's those deals that I think you make in a very, very early part of your entrepreneurship. Yep. That is very, very important, I think.
A couple of things. So I think that people get tunnel vision of how things are going to go down, right? I mean, in this case, this person, I assume, owns this bar, even though she kind of didn't. She was just waiting to get kicked out because she wasn't paying any rent. I assume this contractor is going to charge me to do this stuff. I assume we can't barter But that's important to keep your mind open and not get tunnel vision. And the other thing is grandma's lessons. One of those are you don't get unless you ask, right?
Right. And I think too, it's from Rich Dad Poor Dad that I love is like find the deal, tie it up, and then go find the resources to make the deal happen.
Yeah, sure.
And it's like you said, you just ask.
Yeah. So from there, where did you go?
So from Kaboom, so I ended up selling my business there, and I own 50% of the business.
Okay.
And I ended up selling that and ended up going to a place to do pharmaceutical sales.
Oh.
Yeah. So I did work for Pfizer, which is kind of funny stuff.
So now you're out of the hospitality business.
Yeah, out of the hospitality. I was doing working really hard, actually. You're working until 5, 6 o'clock in the morning in the nightclub business. So I wanted to kind of get out of that scene for a little bit and did the pharmaceutical for about 3 years.
Okay.
And when I came out of that is when I opened up Drunken Fish.
So you were putting some money away as you were selling.
So I made some money selling the business, obviously, to my partner at the time, and stashed that away and saved up some money for about 3 years. And that's when I opened up Drunken Fish in Westport. Plaza in 2003. Yeah,
2003. I mean, I've been working in St. Louis since 1984. 1984 is when I came back from Arizona. And the Drunken Fish, at least at Westport, seems, in my mind, I was trying to figure out when the first time I was there, it seems like it's been around forever, right? And you still have that location.
I do.
Yeah.
We just actually did some light renovations, changed the whole front facade there, but that's the original location. People always think the Central West End is the first location.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, but it's the Westport that kind of started everything.
Yeah, and Westport has changed over the years, for sure. I mean, it's had periods of
the ups and downs.
For sure. I mean, is it in a up mode or is it in a down mode or what? Or
you know what? It's been
same?
such a steady, for us, it's been a very steady business. I mean, all year round, as well as we've had during that 2008 financial crisis. We took a little bit of a hit in terms of sales, but for a couple of years. But other than that, it's been a pretty workhorse, that location.
And, wow. And how did you get into sushi? What made you decide that that's the type of restaurant that you wanted?
There was a certain time period where I was eating a lot of sushi. And I think it's that love of, man, this is good food. Yeah. And I was eating it regularly. I'm like, man, and the place that I was going to was busy. Yeah. I'm like, this might be a good opportunity. So when I was looking around in St. Louis, I was really looking around in the Central West End first because I thought that was a really cool area. Sure. And there wasn't really nothing available for what I was trying to do with not a whole lot of money. And so ran into a friend in Westport hanging out at Trainwreck, and I was looking around, and there was Wilbur and Gill's that was empty. So I called the landlord up, and I'm like, hey, is that space empty? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, I'm trying to open up a sushi restaurant. Yeah. And they were kind of hesitant about striking a deal with a person that's never opened up a restaurant. Sure. I opened up a nightclub in the past, but... Right. They're a little reluctant to giving any money out, but I had to persuade them that, hey, you got to take a risk to be able to make something happen.
Plus, you got an empty space.
You
may end up with an empty space. You already got an empty space.
But at the time, I didn't have a name of the restaurant, what the food was going to be. Yeah. And so it was all of this conversations with the landlord about, hey, you got to trust in me, and I got all this going on. What's the name of the restaurant? I don't know yet, but it's going to be great. We're going to have all this food. Yeah. And so they're taking a little bit of risk with me at the time, I thought. They gave me a little bit of money for TI, but we're able to open up that place. And I think within 3 months, I felt really good about what we're doing.
And so let's talk about the brand for a second. I've always loved your brand, Drunken Fish. Did you come up with that?
I did.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cool name, right? And, there are other sushi places. It is interesting to me that St. Louis, and if you look at St. Louis City, it's a tiny little city, 270,000 people. I'm probably being generous, right? Mm-hmm. But the St. Louis region is 3.5 million people.
It's moving up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not insignificant for sure. But in that, and maybe I'm a little, jaded because I've known you for so many years, but I can't think of many sushi restaurants still to this day that truly specialize in sushi, as opposed to, we've got this thing on our menu, but we're really not specializing in sushi.
At the time, there was maybe 4 places that were serving sushi in total. And so we were bringing something that I thought, hey, I have a pretty good background in bars and liquors and beers and all of that. So really coming up with a name that kind of mentions that a little bit. Drunken with drinking and fish with sushi. And really in the beginning process of going and trying to developing a brand is, hey, we're going to do maybe 75% liquor. And do a little bit of food. So that was the whole concept in the beginning.
Didn't turn out that way.
Obviously, it didn't turn out that way. Flip-flop. And we knew right away, because when we first opened up, we had a very small food menu, but we were still serving about 50% food for the first month.
Mostly lunch out there, or lunch and dinner?
Lunch and dinner.
Yeah. Interesting.
Lunch and dinner.
Yes.
Did you hire a chef at the very beginning, or
we did?
You did.
Yeah.
Yep. And then how did you find him or her?
We ended up finding this person. He was a Croatian chef, so he was somewhat Asian. He was Croatian.
That's where the best sushi chefs come from. Croatia.
Yeah, Croatia. I emphasize the Asia part. And he was a very talented chef. He was with us for a long time, and after a while, I didn't want it to be a restaurant that was known for a chef. And so we started systemizing things a little bit differently. Because you see chef-driven restaurants a lot. And when the chef is there, it's great. When the chef's not there, it's not so great. Right. And so we decided to kind of not go down that direction. Let's let the food be the highlight of what we do, not the chef.
But sushi chef, to me, the preparation of sushi, that's a specialty, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Where did he learn his skills?
This guy pretty much made everything. Not just sushi, but you could say, can you make spaghetti and meatballs? He would make the best spaghetti and meatballs.
Interesting.
This guy was just so talented food-wise. And I do believe that in order to make great food, you do have to understand food a lot.
Sure.
And most great chefs have a very high, keen sense of smell and taste.
Right.
And so he knows what good food tastes like, and he made some really incredible food, not just with sushi, but obviously sushi was really, really good too. And in the beginning, our menu was developed around his skill sets in sushi. Okay.
So, and for those of you, who are not familiar with the brand, we'll put the brand up there on the podcast with Munsok's permission. So you can see it. It's a very cool brand. I've always liked it, both the name and the imagery associated with it. It always looks. I always think that a brand should make you look like you're much bigger than you are. Mm-hmm. Like people see the brand and they go, "Oh yeah, I know that brand," mm-hmm. right? Even if we only got one restaurant at Westport at this point.
Sure.
Yeah,
and it's kind of funny now. We're 18 years into this journey with Drunken Fish, and it's hard to meet people that haven't eaten there or have heard about it. And so I think we've done a pretty good job, myself and our team, promoting the brand, and we've been around in St. Louis for a long time.
And how many locations are there?
We got 4 locations, 3 here in St. Louis and 1 in Kansas City. And the Kansas City one's been out there for over 10 years in the Power and Light District.
I've never been to the Power and Light District.
It's pretty impressive.
Is it still hopping over there?
Well, I was just there last week, and it's because of the pandemic. I think they're about a couple months behind us in terms of restrictions. Oh. And so because Power and Light District is an entertainment district.
Sure, lots of people together.
Yeah, there's a lot of restaurants that are still out right now. I'd say 50% of the restaurants are still closed. Wow. Yeah. And a lot of the entertainment bars and clubs are still closed. And so there's it's a little bit less foot traffic right now.
Sure.
And your footprint, how many square feet on average are your restaurants?
So the smallest one is about 3,400 square feet. That's Westport. Mm-hmm. And the largest one is over 8,000 square feet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that's in KC?
Yeah, that's in KC.
Yeah.
Wow.
So after the Westport experience, it started getting good. Obviously, you realized it was a hit. Mm-hmm. How do you decide that, okay, this is it. I'm going to stick with this. This is working. Obviously, you stuck with it. It's been 2 decades that you've been doing this. when did you realize that, this is something that now I'm going to scale, make bigger?
I think within the 6 months, I knew that it was profitable.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I didn't know at the time as a young kid is by expanding out, am I taking some of our existing customer base and moving them over to the new location? I didn't know that answer.
Right.
And so when I was kind of looking around for the second location, I was afraid of, taking away some of our customer base from Westport.
Sure.
But that wasn't the case. I mean, I think, when you're talking about marketplace in certain neighborhoods, as long as you have a strong brand, usually people don't go too far out of their zones.
Sure.
You might have a little bit of overlap, but not a lot. And so when we opened up the Central West End, we had a whole new, brand new area to promote for.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's important too, because if you start cannibalizing your customers, now you got double the overhead.
Exactly.
And it gets real scary.
That was a tough decision because I knew the location was great in the West End.
Sure.
But I did not know that answer. But, I was like, if I got to take this chance to be able to know that answer.
But that West End, that's been a destination location for St. Louis for years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So would you consider the West End location kind of your real hallmark location? Is that?
I think for sure in St. Louis, it's definitely
it's
more
hip
recognized.
Cool.
It's a hip and cool area of St. Louis. A
Yeah.
lot of people go down there to go to a restaurant or go hang out.
Sure.
And so, and a lot of people know Drunken Fish from the Central West End location.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are anchor places down in the Central West End. I think Drunken Fish is one.
I agree.
I think Bar Italia is one. I'm running out of anchors because some of those restaurants did not survive COVID. What was the one on the corner?
Sub-Zero, Gambling Whiskey House. I mean, they were a staple. Yeah, they were opening up around the same time I was.
Yeah.
And we opened up probably about 6 months before Sub-Zero did.
Okay.
And I remember them coming over to eat sushi all the time. They weren't even going to do sushi, by the way.
Okay.
Sub-Zero had their own vodka bar concept, and they saw how well we were doing in the West End about 6 months, and they ended up, kind of selling sushi afterwards.
But that corner location, I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, you really appear to be an anchor.
Yeah, it's a sexy location.
And then being right next to Bar Italia, that helps too. I think those guys, I've met them a few times.
Some of the most wonderful guys in the industry.
Nice
Bar
guys,
Italia people,
right?
Yeah.
And they will treat you like old friends, even if
sure.
you haven't been there at all, or you haven't been there for 10 years.
Yep.
Yeah, and now they started in a tiny little place.
Yeah, the old Starbucks location there.
Yeah, it was tiny.
30-something years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, so the Central West End has changed. I know Brennan's is now across the street, and I was shocked when they moved out. What's the hamburger joint that I'm trying to think of?
Shake Shack?
No, the hamburger joint that just went out of business was there forever.
In the West End?
Yeah.
Oh, Culpeppers.
Culpeppers.
Yeah.
How the hell did that happen?
I don't know the whole detail, but I know the chess club. I don't know if you know who the owners of the chess club is, but he's got a lot of money, and he wanted to expand his chess club. So that's how he ended up
taken out by the chess club.
Yeah,
that's the lowest of the low.
Checkmate.
I want that corner.
Seriously? So what do they do at the chess club? Clearly, I know checkers, but I don't know the lesser game of chess.
People go there to play chess, and I heard it's one of the most well-known places in the world for chess is in St. Louis.
Wow.
There's like several grandmaster chess players here in St. Louis.
I won't be
Obviously,
going.
I'm not one of them, and I know you're not, Eric.
Wow.
There's nothing like a robust checkers game, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, it's right down here. Is it on the side of the building down here? Is painted like the 1894 World Chess Tournament was here, or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, so we are known for chess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. St. Louis is known for chess. St. Louis is known for chess in the world.
Wow.
We just don't play chess, so we don't know about it. But people who play chess, they know St. Louis is the hub.
Isn't that crazy?
The most dangerous city in the world. Also known for chess.
Isn't that crazy? That's ironic.
Exactly.
That's ironic.
All right, so Central West End. Now you got Central West End established. That was a big nut. That cost a lot of money for sure to get into.
Yeah, for sure.
But now this is successful. About how long did you wait until you realize, okay, now this is really working? I got a second location.
Well, the second location came exactly a year after I opened up Westport. So it was.
You weren't waiting.
That's
no,
pretty aggressive.
It was. So I realized 6 months we were doing pretty well.
You're still in your 20s at this point.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then within 6 months, I found the second location, which is Central West End.
Okay.
So we opened up within a year, 2 locations, and then we waited about a year and a half until I bought the building down on the Landing. So the Landing location came in 2006.
So the Landing location, 2006, the Landing was still very much a hot spot. Mm-hmm. Bars, comedy clubs. It was a St. Louis is interesting because it had these neighborhoods, and it still does. I assume every city does. Now it's the Central West End and the Grove, and it's changed over time. It used to be Washington Avenue. I think that's dead as far as I know. Mm-hmm. Where we are at Aspen Legal, we're in the Locust Building District, and I think Business District, and I think that's going to be a hot spot only because they're putting all this money in a Major League Soccer stadium 2 blocks away. So it'll be interesting to see what happens right here. But St. Louis had these pockets of destination locations. The Landing was certainly a destination location at that time. Things have changed at the Landing as well, or at least they appear to have changed. So, but the Landing worked out well. I mean, you're 3 for 3. How is that possible? Do you believe that it's just the quality and the system and the pricing, and you can duplicate this so people were satisfied all over at every location?
I think when it comes to consistency in the business, the third location really taught me a lot about systems.
Okay.
I think with 2 locations, being able to go to both of those locations and having a pretty flat process where I had some control over the few managers that I had.
Sure.
We were able to make sure the Drunken Fish roll tasted like a Drunken Fish roll in the West End from Westport. But when we got to the third location is when I started having some issues with quality or consistency. That
was that all about the management?
I think it's
not your management.
Obviously, it's all about management and leadership. Yeah. I blame a lot of that on my shoulders at the time of how do we create some of those things to create, and it really is. I think the demise of a lot of businesses is not having that level of consistency.
Sure.
Well, if it's a product or service over and over again.
Sure.
So I started to realize, hey, I need to start systemizing some things, having recipes in place, having training manuals in place, and we started working a lot on the infrastructure of the business at that time.
Yeah.
Because
so you started acting like a franchise system. Yeah.
That's right. As opposed to let Nick show you how to make this. Now we're going through a recipe that's already there.
Yeah.
It's got some video training there. And it's got some recipes
so centralized training in a way.
Centralized training where it was, instead of word of mouth, we were going through a checkbook or a checklist.
Sure.
And so we started standardizing and putting a lot of work toward that infrastructure, meaning we're creating inventories, we're creating recipe books and training manuals, all tied around creating a consistent experience.
Okay.
And so I think that took really several years.
Right.
Because it's not an easy process. Because most restaurant people, they try to operate in the restaurant.
Sure.
And to get yourself out of the operations to work on infrastructure is a really hard thing to do for most businesses.
That is so true. I mean, I know, a guy, Ron Cody, that had Chomi's, and his favorite location was the Landing location. And he came to me years ago to franchise. He wanted to expand. He was an ex-Hooters guy. And every time I went into for lunch, the Landing location, who was making the French fries or grilling the hamburgers? Ron Cody. And it's like, dude, you're your worst enemy because you got to be an executive. You've got to be in control over the whole business as opposed to, on a very molecular scale, but he couldn't stop getting out of the operations.
I think that's one of the hallmarks or a sign where a young entrepreneur, in my opinion, going back and looking at my history and what I've done wrong and a lot of things I did, right. But I think when you are in the operations, you shouldn't expand.
Yeah.
It's the advice that I give most business people. It's like,
it
I have
ain't
a lot
gonna
of
work
friends.
out.
if you're in the operations,
yeah,
then you shouldn't expand to another location.
Yeah,
and that's that goes back to the whole thing: work on the business, not in the business.
That's right.
And that's tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, and
it's hard for a lot of people.
And that sounds just like just a slogan or whatever, right? And it goes against what Dad told me. If you want to do something right, you got to do it yourself, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is you can still take that lesson, but what you're doing right is something at a higher level than that granular level being at the restaurant. But you still had to be running yourself ragged between these three locations.
I think when it came down to probably the third year of me operating, 3 restaurants,
sure,
I made a concerted effort to make sure that I didn't get into the operations.
Yeah.
So even at that moment, I knew how important it was for me to not be in the operations. So I haven't really even been in the restaurant operating, closing, running shifts, or managing probably in the last 15 years.
That's awesome.
But I'm not saying that's not an important work. Obviously, that's very, very important work. But
sure.
I knew if I was in the operation, I couldn't work on my business.
Yeah. So I think about those people who, the guy that last ran Anheuser-Busch, Peacock, he started as pushing beer, delivering beer, all right? And he'll tell you that, I'd go to C-stores and it'd be me pushing the keg in, right? And then he worked his way up. And there's some value in that, I understand. You can understand the business from the I don't want to say the lowest level. That's not fair to the guys pushing the barrels, but you know what I'm talking about. You can understand the whole process, and there's value in that for sure. But to know that you had to avoid getting stuck in the operations, particularly for a 26, 27-year-old person, that's probably wise beyond your years at that point. That's great advice for sure.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to expand.
And I have a lot of friends that are in the business, and I said, it's when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go in still. It's the good telltale sign that you got things set up.
Yeah.
Like somebody calls in sick, or what I'm saying.
Sure.
When something goes wrong and you still don't have to go into your business,
and they're not calling you, they're calling somebody else.
I think that's a good sign that you're ready to expand or grow your business or scale.
So Kansas City was your next location, but that was different because that's out there. That's a 5-hour, whatever it is, 4.5-hour drive away. That had to be scary.
Yeah, it's that location came about through Ballpark Village.
Okay.
I mean, Ballpark Village was supposed to happen like 7 years before it happened.
Okay.
And so
was Ballpark Village before Kansas City?
No.
Okay.
No, but Ballpark was supposed to happen a lot earlier than it did.
Yeah.
So those Cordish guys were in St. Louis at the time.
Yeah.
And I ended up meeting up with the Cordish people way before Ballpark ever happened.
Cordish is the group that develops these big entertainment districts, including the Power and Light District. I think they have one in Nashville. I know they have one all over the place.
They have one. Yeah, they have multiple locations
around
the country.
They're out of Baltimore, I think.
They're out of Baltimore.
Yeah.
But they have one in Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, Texas.
Yeah, and they do pretty good, I think, with their developments. So you met with Cordish, and they started talking about this development that they were going to put, or this entertainment.
They were
district.
talking to me about Ballpark Village. It's like, hey, you want to open up a Ballpark Village location, And
I said, by the way, these things are pre-sold for like years ahead of time because that's how they get the money.
Sure.
To develop the thing in the first place.
Right. And so I told him I wasn't really interested in Ballpark because of the close proximity to the landing location.
Very close.
So they talked me into going out to Kansas City. They said they just, not that long ago, opened up the Power and Light District, and I should go out there and take a look. And so that's what happened. So I went out there, and I had a buddy that lived out there, so he was kind of showing me around Power and Light District, and there's a lot of fun things going on down there at the time. Yeah. It's really got established now. There's a lot of apartment complexes that are surrounding that area, but it reminded me a little bit about how Ballpark Village started.
Okay.
Is when I went out there back 10, 11 years ago.
Okay.
Is the kind of the sounding board in the neighborhood was Power and Light opened up, and they took a lot of businesses away from Westport and the River Market and the Plaza. and a lot of the mom and pops kind of closed down. And I think Ballpark kind of went through the same kind of scenario.
Sure.
It's like a lot of the local businesses were closing down.
Yeah.
And now, 10 years later, those areas are thriving in
Sure.
Kansas City. And because I think, development in general is good for the community.
Sure.
No matter who's doing it.
Yeah. And Kansas City has, again, whether you like or dislike the political leadership there, Kansas City has been on a faster pace for developing than St. Louis for quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. It's a much more progressive city, in my opinion.
Who would know, right?
Yeah.
Kansas City.
You would think it's not, but it is.
Right. Yeah. So that was a challenge for sure. Obviously, that was successful because you weren't done building, and you built. Finally, they talked you into doing Ballpark Village, which, for those people who are listening who are not familiar with St. Louis, the name is exactly what it is. It's a smaller entertainment district built around the new Busch Stadium. I guess it's not new anymore. It still seems new to those of us who grew up in St. Louis. And now that has apartment complex. I think apartment complexes on either end of it, doesn't it? It's around.
Well, I think it's kind of going through the same journey as Power and Light.
Sure.
So they just made the announcement last week about building 3 Light, which is a high-end residential complex that's going to be right directly across from my restaurant.
Oh,
there.
wow.
And so they had 1 Light and 2 Light. And so really the first residential is kind of like 1 Light, but they're going to eventually build multiple residential around it.
Interesting.
And so it really brings people downtown, living downtown, which I think is good for urban living.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, St. Louis has suffered for years from basically people moving out of the city. So they might come into downtown to work in the city, and then they'll go out in the suburbs to live. And because of that, not much infrastructure was built in the city, grocery stores, schools, etc. And that's really hurt St. Louis for sure. I started work in 1984 downtown at 1010 Market, which is really ages me. Sally Jesse Raphael had her show in the bottom of that, where Channel 5 was located for years. But I called it the Step Building. It's that white building that looks like steps from the side. But there was a lot more going on downtown in 1984 than there is in 2021. Yeah. Unless there's a ball game going on. Yeah. Or unless there's a hockey game. I mean, other than hockey and baseball, St. Louis downtown can get a little dead. No pun intended. But it can on a Friday night be a little scary place for sure. So much of that is going to be driven in the future by when they're going to permit the people to fill up the ballpark again. I mean, it's at 32% occupancy right now, which ain't great for sure.
No.
Yeah. So at some point you said, okay, enough of Drunken Fish, okay? And how did that come about when you started developing another brand? Was it a bit of, okay, I've done this and I can do this well, but now I'm looking for a new challenge? How did that come about?
The idea of opening up something different came around a time when we had a small building collapse at the building that I own.
Right.
And it's kind of a funny story because I was working out of the conference room in our corporate office there.
Right.
And
this is the landing?
This is the landing.
Yeah.
This is the building that I bought in 06.
Yeah.
And we have a conference room overlooking the arch grounds. Right. And my seat directly is behind the window. Okay. And a friend of mine came up and asked me if I wanted to go grab lunch. I'm like, yeah. Didn't think anything of it. Left 15
Saved
minutes.
Your life.
Pretty much. If you Google...
The wall fell down.
Oh, the wall fell down. And if you see this dangling chair...
That's your chair.
A dangling chair out of this window. That's my chair.
Oh, wow.
That's my chair, So, it's pretty crazy.
Right.
It's pretty crazy. I'm looking at that picture. I'm like, man, that's my chair. That's dangling. Which means I would have fell over that chair.
No seatbelt.
No seatbelt. No helmet. Right. Yeah. So it was a pretty crazy situation. I came back 15 minutes later.
I remember that.
what buildings collapse? I mean, you don't ever hear about these kind of things. You
it's
know,
old. It's old, I guess. I mean,
it's a 130-something-year-old building, and that south wall hits. That sun hits it every day, and at the time they were doing demolition of the arch parking garage,
so it was shaking.
And the Metrolink had construction going on. So we would literally feel vibrations in the building.
Wow.
And so I think it was a combination of all, because we had like forensic engineers out there and they couldn't exactly figure out why it collapsed.
Right.
And so it was a combination, I think, old building, demolition, construction.
Shook it to the ground.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. But it was that one, so it was the one wall, but it was a wall to your restaurant, to your offices?
It was, so it was 2 panes of window for 3 floors that came down. Because of all of the sprinkler system and all that water damage to the restaurant at Drunken Fish on the main level. Okay. We that building was condemned, obviously. It was condemned until we can get everything back in order again. Right. So that building, we didn't start working on that building for 2.5 years later because of the insurance. Oh.
Why didn't they want to pay?
I don't know. It was,
they found a reason.
Yeah. Oh, my God. If you ever gone through a process like that, it will eat you alive.
How did you come out?
Came out pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
But it took a long time. Yeah. It was multiple meetings.
So did you have to deconstruct the building more before you could build it
when insurance finally said, hey, we're going to pay this out. Yeah. Then I started thinking about, do we want to reopen Drunken Fish? Or do we want to reopen it in a different way? Okay. Or do we want to open it smaller? So we started having these conversations of, is Drunken Fish the right brand for the neighborhood at the time?
But it wasn't the business's fault, so to speak.
No, we were operating that day when it was...
it was just something that happened that made you, okay, now I've got a new start at least this location. Yeah. What should I do?
Yeah,
But the neighborhood was changing at the time.
So think about, we had the Ballpark Village open at the time, so it was less than a mile away. Sure. So we're like, well, maybe we should do something different and do something a little bit more fast casual. Mm-hmm. And so when we started kind of researching and having some conversations around that. Obviously, I'm Korean, and I'm like, well, maybe we can do something fast casual around a Korean brand. Okay. And that's when the Korean fried chicken concept came about.
Huh. And you came up with that yourself?
We did, yeah. Oh. My team and myself. Okay. Mainly the recipes were, built by me, but yeah, it's a fun menu.
Yeah. And so when you rebuilt that building, that's the brand that you put in it.
We decided to. So there's several things. We decided to put a fast casual concept, Kimchi Guys, on the main level. Yeah. We also decided to, because of the views of the 5th floor. Okay. We decided to put an open venue for weddings and corporate events up on the 5th floor.
And that's called something different.
That's called 612 North. Yep. And decide to take the lower level area and convert that to a second event space. So we have View, which is one of the room names for 612 North. Yeah. And Arc, which is also the lower area 612 North space as well.
Okay, good. And those look out on the arch grounds.
Those look out onto the arch grounds. It's an amazing view. Yeah. We have, you got a pretty solid 5-star rating for every one of our events that we have done out there.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
excellent.
Food and for service and all that.
So from the collapse of a wall came two new products.
It came 612 North, came Kimchi Guys, and it came our entire 4th floor corporate offices.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's how we kind of landed afterwards.
So since we're always trying to advance entrepreneurial education, this whole idea of insurance, I think people get lazy with insurance. I think they get a policy. They never read it to begin with, and then they're surprised in the end that their claim isn't covered. And I'll give you some examples. People should now know that there's data breach insurance that you can get, all right, which is pretty important, right? If you've got a whole bunch of credit cards and personal information, it's not cheap, but it's out there to get. And if you don't get that specific policy, don't be surprised that a data breach is not covered. Mm-hmm. Workplace or employment practices insurance. A lot of clients will come to me, well, we've had a sexual harassment claim. It's like, well, that's, it's horrible, but we're okay. We've got the employment practices. Employment, who now? What? Right? That they didn't get employment practices. It's very important to review, well, in 2020, business interruption insurance. Oh, my gosh, right? If people had it. But nobody even knew what a pandemic was. So if your insurance policy excluded or didn't mention pandemics in 2019, you'd go, what the hell, that's fine. One's never happened, so, not in my lifetime. And then all of a sudden we have a pandemic. I just believe that insurance companies are looking to find a way to not cover your loss, all right? And the reason why I believe that is insurance companies are filthy rich. And you don't get that way by paying claims. You get that way by not paying claims. So another lesson learned is, Munsok took 2.5 years to get this resolved.
To get an answer. Yeah,
and my guess is the insurance company was working extra hard not to have to pay for that building.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and to have to go get a lawyer to
go back, I'll add a little something funny to this, is that when I bought the building, because it was an old building, and I don't know if it was my insurance agent person or it was such a long time ago, but I bought extra building collapse coverage.
Wow.
Not joking.
He actually bought the policy, and yet they still try to get out.
Oh yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
I go, wow, I bought extra building collapse coverage on this building.
Now your building wasn't the building that didn't Nelly have some sort of studio down there for a while?
Nelly, the St. Louis rapper, had a building up on what is that? First Street.
Oh, but that wasn't close to your building. I mean, it was a block away.
Yeah, it's a street up.
Yeah, that he's no longer in business, is he?
I don't think so.
I saw his original mansion out in Eureka for sale for like $650,000. Okay, and he spent millions of dollars on that thing, but it was all overgrown, and what the hell are you gonna do living out in Eureka, right?
Yeah.
All right, so. When did you realize that your second concept, your third concept was the venue, which is doing well, but this Kimchi Guys, the Korean fried chicken, did I say that right?
Fried chicken, yeah.
Yeah. So now you're opening up a second location of that, or is
We're opening up a second location right now.
Yeah.
That'll open up sometime probably in June of this year.
Yeah.
And so a couple months from now. So we got the permits into the city right now, and it'll be on the corner of Skinker and Forest Park Parkway, where Caldi's is located.
Right, right by Wash U.
By Wash U. So that'll be our second location. We've been kind of developing the recipes and that brand for the last couple of years, and I feel really good about the menu now.
And do the data that you get back. Well, first of all, let's go back to Drunken Fish. If you had to describe the general customer of Drunken Fish, and maybe there's no general description, but how does that play out? Obviously, the West End is different than the Central West End, which is different, but maybe not so much than the Power and Light District. What would the data show that your normal customer is?
I think our normal customer base for Drunken Fish is, I say college student to 40 to 45-year-old, professionals.
Sure.
And the person that is going out and dining in, I would say is the main customer base.
Yeah.
Now, during the pandemic, I was very, very surprised the amount of takeouts people were doing.
For sushi, right?
For sushi.
Yeah.
For sushi, because I always felt that our brand was very, very, very strong in the interaction, with the server, with all of that.
But that is interesting, because I think the biggest sushi operator in the United States operates in grocery stores, and I think it's called what's it called? I call it Tidal Wave, but it's another word for Tidal Wave. That when you go into a Deerberg's, for example, you see this little unit and they're producing sushi there. They might have gotten people used to sushi for takeout.
Yeah.
It's not abnormal.
Yeah. I mean, we had a 5% takeout model at the time.
Tsunami.
Before COVID.
It's called Tsunami.
Yeah, 5% takeout model before the pandemic, and then afterwards we went skyrocketed all the way to 100%, obviously. And then now it's sitting right around 45-50%. And people, even though they can dine in, they're still getting it for takeout.
Interesting.
That's great.
Yeah. So COVID changed a lot, and not in a bad way.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So through COVID, you were able to thrive, or more than survive, because of the takeout, and obviously the PPP loans that everybody should have taken didn't hurt either.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah. And now Kimchi Guys, is the crowd different for that?
I think the crowd is a little different because it's the fast casual model.
Yes.
We already knew that it was going to be strong in takeout, so our sales doubled, if not tripled, during the pandemic.
Jeez.
So we were in a good place with Kimchi Guys, for sure. And so we've been kind of honing in on the menu and making modifications and adding things and getting feedback. And it took us a couple of years, but I feel really good about where the menu is. And obviously our cream fried chicken is our best seller, but we got some really good bowls, cream barbecue meatballs and bibimbaps and things of that sort.
So basically, like for you guys, during COVID, that allowed you to basically go in and work on your menu and get it dialed in. So now when you open up out here at Forest Park, you're going to be in a really good position to have a product that's going to hit hard, especially in that area.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, one of the things that we worked on really strongly right when COVID hit is the way we order. We had this, order and pay method now that's implemented in all of the brands. And it's really, you guys have been to restaurants where you guys scan a QR code and get a menu popped up. But our process, you do the entire process. You order yourself, you pay, you can reorder.
Reduce your overhead.
Yeah. So we've been able to save some significant labor and overhead around that process because, first of all, it does take a little bit of time to get used to if you're a customer. But it's kind of like, I always explain it like the first time you went through a checkout line at Schnucks. Yeah. It's like that self-checkout line you were kind of avoiding in the beginning. Yeah. But now I kind of tend to go to it first because it's faster. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so, and I remember when it first came up, I avoided it as well, and I didn't like it. And I tell the customers the same way, hey, just use it a couple times. You're going to love it because it's faster. You don't have to wait for a waiter to come up and reorder a drink. Yep. You can pay when you want to leave without waiting for a server to come up. And so it's a very efficient process. Our voids and comps went down significantly because, think about it, you're doing the ordering. There's no mistakes that are happening. And as soon as you fire off a drink or a food item, it goes straight to the kitchen or bar.
Yeah, you can't say, I ordered this instead of this. Right.
So, you ordered it.
Yeah, a friend sent me a message the other day, and she said, could you imagine this pandemic 20 years ago without the technologies that we have now?
Yeah.
It would have been 1,000 times worse.
And we've talked about this. It is amazing. It doesn't surprise me that. So this is our 6th podcast, and everything that we have talked about in these podcasts builds on the other, right? There's experiences that are shared that are common. There are common lessons to entrepreneurship. It doesn't surprise me. And one of the things we talked about is COVID brought a lot of positive things, right? It taught us how to be more efficient, for sure. And my example was stupid, but I'll use it anyway, right? So when I used to get checks from clients, all right, I used to take them to the bank. Now I go click, click, in, right? Yeah. And that sounds like a little thing. It's a huge thing because as soon as the check gets to me, it's in my bank account. And I've still got an original copy, which I file away just in case I need it one day, right? And, COVID brought a lot of efficiencies because of all of these apps and developments. And and for Kimchi Guys and for Drunken Fish, it was all positive, or at least it sounds like
I feel bad for some of the other businesses that didn't take advantage of some of the technology that was available. Yeah. And some of the delivery services they could have probably, got on around that time to help their businesses because, I just read somewhere that 118,000 restaurants are permanently closed around the country.
We talked about that the other day. Yeah.
I'm surprised it's that little.
Yeah. And you know, like even for my stores, I mean, I can sit right here. I can pull up a cash register right here, and I can run a transaction here, or I can run a transaction off my phone, and like I can see everything. Like you can do it. I can look how many, and you can do like I can look on and be like, how many CLA do I have in stock? Sure. Boom, I know. Like it's really, and you got to embrace it, or you're going to get passed up. You will get passed up.
Embrace it.
Yeah. So, how do you still keep interested in the Drunken Fish when Kimchi Guys is your new baby?
Well, I mean, our bread and butter is Drunken Fish, you know, and I think one of the things that we're working on with our company, So Hospitality Group, is coming up with some brands that we can scale together. So, I don't know if I told you this, but we're opening up a coffee shop called Miss Java sometime at the end of this year. Yeah. So we're going to have an event space, 612. Yeah. Kimchi Guys, Miss Java, and Drunken Fish. Wow. Yeah. And I think when we have those,
and he's still in his 20s.
Multiplied by.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I think that's that. So I think.
This is a big deal. I mean, this is a lot of concepts.
And it all started by not stumbling into the travel lodge.
Yeah.
Well, but that's awesome, right? Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah. So tell us more. Where's the first coffee shop going to be?
That's going to be it. So the right side of my building is Kimchi Guys. Oh. And the left side will be Miss Java.
So that's you're going into the landing.
Yeah, it's a landing. Yeah. It's going into the landing.
And this coffee shop is going to be after the after dinner crowd or what?
We get a lot of tourists out there for the Arch Grounds.
Still.
Yes.
Yes, so and the Arch Grounds has done well for you, but that opening back up.
The demise of the landing is really when the Arch Grounds started going into construction. Yeah. The Arch parking garage went into demolition. Yeah. And really just shut off the landing to the general downtown. I see. And I think that's when everything started kind of going downhill for many years. Yeah. And now I feel like there's an upside to the landing that I'm very, very excited about. And the new leadership down on the landing wants to see more residential out there and attract more retail out to the landing.
You know, my cousin runs the Arch. He has for years, David Grove. And if a connection would ever help, let me know.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
Because that landing organization and David, who controls that federal park, which is what it is, you know, they should work together.
You should come down. I mean, there's a lot of new changes. I mean, the streets are all new. They got a new park opening up. Oh, nice. Obviously, Peeper Lofts opened up a couple of years ago. That's doing well. That same developer bought over, 8-9 buildings out on the landing.
Well, who is that developer? Is that the dude out of Atlanta or what?
David Mingus. Oh. I'm sorry, Brian Mingus.
Brian Mingus. Yeah. I've heard that name before. Is he local?
He's local.
Oh, he's local.
Yeah, he's local.
Interesting. A lot of the development around here, around the Locust Business District, is being done by a guy out of Atlanta.
Oh, is that right?
And, you got your work cut out for you in some of these locations in St. Louis, for sure, because they've been run down for quite some time. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I know this is not fair because I'm going to try to have you compartmentalize things. But if you had to tell someone who wanted to get into business, and it really doesn't matter what, right? Whether it's a restaurant business or what have you, if you had a few lessons or a few takeaways, what would you tell that person?
Boy, I think I say to take a chance, especially if somebody is younger, is take a chance in doing something that you want. You don't want to ever live your life and regret that you didn't do something. And I think
100%.
100%. It's like don't live that regret. Go try it, especially if you're younger in your 20s or 30s. Go take a chance. Yes. And I would always say if you do something that you're somewhat passionate about, because whatever that top, because people chase money. Yeah. We talked a little bit about in the beginning of this podcast about greed and how money can not just drive you, be a big motivator for you, or else what. Yeah. But I think, if you chase some passion of some interest that you have, I think it becomes less of work and you'll be more likely to succeed. Sure. So if it is whatever.
That is interesting. People say, Well, first of all, when Munsok comes on again after he starts the coffee shop, we're going to have to train him. It's not take a chance; it's take a risk. Okay, but nonetheless, we appreciate the kind of sideways fucking kudos that he just gave us. But with all that said, so my dad was back from World War II. He was hanging out. I think I told you this story. He was hanging out with some guys that wanted to take motels, which were mom and pop back then. Remember, this 1940s, and they understood, visionaries, they understood that all those guys were going to get home. What are they going to do? They're going to get married and start families, for sure. And they wanted to make a brand that families would feel comfortable with, would be clean, would be priced correctly, and they wanted my dad to be a part of it. My dad and my uncle, a guy named Webb Severett, who ultimately became the master brewer for Stag Brewery in Belleville, Illinois. But nonetheless, they passed on it. They didn't take the chance. They didn't take a risk. Those guys went on and formed Ramada Inn. And my dad, before he died, just a few years before he died, told me that story. I never heard it before. And he said, you know what I think about every day? Passing on Ramada Inn. Passing on Ramada Inn, right?
Yep.
Right? And then I beat him with a shoe because it's like, do you realize how rich I would be? But the thing is that's very real. When you pass on something, those regrets are very real. And then the other thing that Munsok said is, love what you do. I never understood love what you do because I've always worked for someone other than me. I was a partner at a law firm. I was a partner at another law firm. Partner just means employee with an asterisk, and you gotta kiss all the time, right? Some dickhead that runs the firm, okay, who's not qualified, you gotta kiss his ass because he's on the comp committee, and you gotta fight for dollars. It's a useless task, all right? But loving what you actually do, whether it's this podcast, I clearly love doing this, or meeting people like Munsok. Munsok in my relationship is that of friendship first, right? And I've told him that many times over. And I won't get into anything because I don't want to start crying. But loving what you do is usually not associated with loving what you do for a boss. Mm-hmm. It's loving what you're trying to build on your own or with your team. And I think that's incredibly important.
You know, I tell people this all the time now, like, I flat out love slinging subs. I love vitamins. I love the business. It's not. I work 7 days. I'll work 7 days a week. I don't care.
7 days a week. We talked about this.
I want to perfect that. You know, it's, if you love it, you are going to just kill it.
Yeah. People would ask me like how many hours I work, and I go, I don't know. I mean, right. I do what I have to do, and I never track it. I never track how many vacations I went on. And if you're a beginning entrepreneur or you want to get into entrepreneurship, and you think and you're worried about when you're going to be off,
right?
Don't go down that direction. You know,
you're never off. Yeah. I mean, I work Sundays, and when I worked at somebody else's law firm, even though I was a quote partner, I didn't want to work on Sunday, right? I got Monday to dread, right? Now I don't dread Monday. I go to bed on Sunday going, Jesus, I wish there were more hours in the day because I didn't get everything done.
That's the difference.
And you need to know your lane, because I'll give you an example. Like, my older sister will go, I don't know how you do this. She goes, I'm going in at 9 and I'm leaving at 5. When I get in my car, my job is over. But she knows it. And guess what? From 9 to 5, she from 9 to 5, she's a rock star.
But I think everybody has to understand what lane that they need to play in. Because when you identify yourself early enough to know, hey, this is the lane I want to play in, you're better off. Because most people can't be entrepreneurs, you know. But when you're an entrepreneur, and you should have always been an entrepreneur, you're gonna love it. You know, and I always felt you, Eric, that you were that person.
Oh, absolutely.
He just didn't convince me.
Right?
You were always that person.
You got to learn to take a risk.
Yeah, damn straight. Right.
So like, I lost my train of thought, but like staying in your lane. But when I was doing my FDD, I would be in bed at 2 or 3 in the morning, be like, oh, I should, and I would get up, go out, log in, and next thing you know, it's 6 a.m. But you're like, you're in the zone. You don't care. You love it.
I loved it. I worked 7 days a week for, I felt like years.
Yeah.
You know, and
but
so,
look what you built.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I knew this podcast would be great. Munsok is the entrepreneur for sure. So if you could just kind of mention your brands again, and also give the URL of So Hospitality so people can be reminded.
So Hospitality is our company, So Hospitality Group. My brands underneath that is the Drunken Fish, which is drunkenfish.com. Kimchi Guys, which is our fast casual concept. We have one location on the landing, another one coming near WashU, and that's kimchiguys.com.
Okay.
And then 612 North Event Space and Catering is our event venue that's located on the landing as well. And that's 612north.com.
Awesome.
And then Miss Java will be coming the spring of 2022, which is a coffee brand out of the landing location as well.
Fantastic. All right. Munsok is awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. You going to hit the music? You're always loaded. Last time he hit.
Hot topics.
That's what he hit to take us out.